They said the devil made him do it. Those words echoed through a 1981 courtroom during a brutal murder trial. But this wasn't just some desperate legal defense. It was the centerpiece of a case that would shake America, led by two of the most controversial paranormal investigators who ever lived, Ed and Lorraine Warren. For decades, these two walked into homes where families were at their breaking point, begging for help against things they couldn't see or understand. Poltergeists throwing furniture, demonic entities scratching at bedroom doors, spirits that turned loving homes into living nightmares. The Warrens didn't run from this darkness. They ran toward it, studied it, and claimed they could beat it. But here's what keeps me up at night. Were Ed and Lorraine Warren really the protectors they claimed to be? Or were they something else entirely? Something that might be even more unsettling than the ghosts they chased? Let me tell you about this couple because they weren't your typical suburban pair. While most newlyweds were picking out curtains and planning barbecues, Ed and Lorraine were hunting demons. Ed was a Navy vet who somehow became a self-taught demonologist. No fancy theology degree, just pure conviction that he understood evil better than most. Lorraine, she said she'd been psychic since childhood, able to sense spirits and sometimes slip into trances during investigations. Together they became this unstoppable force against the supernatural, like some real-life ghost-busting duo decades before the movies made it cool. Back in 1952, they started the New England Society for Psychic Research, NESPR, they called it. They claimed it was America's oldest ghost hunting group. This wasn't weekend entertainment for them. This was their calling. Over their careers, they said they investigated more than 10,000 cases. Think about that number for a second. That's haunted houses, possessed people, cursed objects, you name it, they faced it. Their toolkit, part Catholic ritual, part psychology, part showmanship. The church never officially backed them, but when you're desperate and something's terrorizing your kids at 3 a.m., you don't care about official endorsements. Of course, not everyone bought what they were selling. Plenty of people called them frauds, opportunists preying on scared families. Academics rolled their eyes, skeptics picked apart their evidence. But the Warrens, they just kept going, building this massive collection of case files so wild that Hollywood couldn't resist. The Conjuring movies, Annabelle, The Nun, all pulled straight from the Warrens' files. And here's what really gets me. Decades later, we're still arguing about them. Some people swear they were the real deal. Others insist they were con artists with a gift for reading a room. The truth? It's somewhere in that murky middle where belief meets doubt. So who were Ed and Lorraine Warren really? Heroes fighting the good fight against evil? Or master manipulators who knew exactly which buttons to push in a frightened public? As we dig into their most disturbing cases, we're going to walk through a timeline filled with unexplained events, genuine terror, and the kind of belief that changes lives, where maybe the scariest thing isn't what was haunting these families, but the people who showed up claiming they could fix it. This is the macabre history of the Warren family, a story about faith, fear, and the things that go bump in the night that you were always told weren't real. Over 50 years, Ed and Lorraine Warren built a reputation on cases so bizarre they made you question everything you thought you knew about reality. Whether you think they were heroes or hucksters, you can't deny their investigations still give people chills today. Let's start with Annabelle. Yeah, that doll. Here's the thing, the real Annabelle wasn't some cracked porcelain nightmare with evil eyes. She was just a Raggedy Ann doll, a kid's toy, harmless, right? Wrong, at least according to the Warrens. Back in the early 70s, 2 nursing students said this doll was moving around their apartment on its own. They'd find handwritten notes saying, "Help us." Then their friend claimed the doll tried to strangle him. The women brought in a psychic who told them a little girl named Annabelle Higgins was haunting the doll. Sweet story, except things got violent fast. Enter the Warrens. Ed took one look and said, "Nope, that's not a dead kid. That's something pretending to be a dead kid. Something inhuman." They locked that doll in their museum behind glass with a sign that basically said, "Touch this and die." People still debate whether Annabelle's evil or just fabric and stuffing, but I'll tell you what, that doll became horror royalty. Then there's the Perron family case, the one that inspired The Conjuring. Picture this. Early 1970s, middle of nowhere, Rhode Island. Family of 7 moves into an old farmhouse. Doors slam, chairs float, voices whisper in empty rooms. The Perrons believed they were dealing with Bathsheba Sherman, supposedly a witch from the 1800s who sacrificed her baby to Satan. When the Warrens showed up, Lorraine said she felt this overwhelming dark presence. They tried a seance to cleanse the house, but according to the family, it just made things worse. The mother, Carolyn, was physically attacked. Years later, daughter Andrea wrote about it, praising the Warrens, but also hinting that Hollywood took some creative liberties. Skeptics say there's no solid proof Bathsheba was even a witch, but that family, they were never the same. Now, Amityville. This is where things get messy. 1975, George and Kathy Lutz move into a house where, just a year earlier, Ronald DeFeo Jr. had murdered his entire family in their beds. The Lutzes lasted 28 days before fleeing, claiming the house was demonically possessed. The Warrens investigated and said the psychic pressure was overwhelming. They even took a photo of what they claimed was a ghost boy. But then the cracks started showing. Critics noticed the Lutz story read like a horror movie script. DeFeo's lawyer later admitted they cooked up the haunting for a book deal. If that's true, the Warrens were either duped or complicit in one of history's biggest paranormal hoaxes. But if it's real, then Amityville was hell on earth. The devil made me do it case took things to a whole new level. 1981, Arne Johnson stabs his landlord to death. His defense? Demonic possession. Months earlier, Johnson's girlfriend's little brother had allegedly been possessed. The Warrens helped with an exorcism and warned that the demon might have jumped into Arnie. When the murder happened, they backed up his story, helping build the first demonic possession defense in U.S. legal history. The judge threw it out. Johnson went to prison, but the media went wild. To believers, this proved evil could make you kill. To skeptics, it was a dangerous game, using supernatural beliefs to dodge accountability. Even their involvement in Britain's Enfield Poltergeist case in '77 was controversial. 2 sisters claimed they were being tormented, objects flying, one girl speaking in strange voices, beds shaking. Local researchers were already investigating when the Warrens showed up uninvited. Some investigators basically told them to get lost. Guy Lyon Playfair, a lead researcher, accused Ed of being more interested in book deals than helping. Still, the case became legendary, and The Conjuring 2 made it seem like the Warrens were the heroes. Classic Hollywood. What connects all these cases isn't just the terror, it's how the Warrens turned personal nightmares into public legends. They took individual trauma and made it universal. But for every family they claimed to save, someone else asked the uncomfortable question, were they documenting evil or creating it? To really understand the Warrens' legacy, you've got to look at how the world reacted to them. Because while some families practically worshipped them as saviors, others saw something darker, a calculated campaign to dominate paranormal headlines and sell fear disguised as faith. Their supporters talk about them like saints. Religious communities especially saw them as proof that spiritual warfare is real, that demons actually attack innocent people, and that we need warriors like Ed and Lorraine to protect us. Former clients praised them for bringing peace, or at least answers, to unexplainable horrors. To true believers, the Warrens weren't just ghost hunters playing with EMF readers. They were the last line of defense against actual evil, and man, did that fan base explode. When The Conjuring hit theaters in 2013, it didn't just make bank, it turned the Warrens into legends. The whole cinematic universe that followed raked in over $2 billion. Suddenly, everyone knew their names. Social media lit up with people sharing their own ghost stories, thanking the Warrens for proving the paranormal is real. But while Hollywood was cashing checks, a different story was unfolding, one built on decades of doubt and accusations. Scientists and skeptics had been calling BS on the Warrens for years. James Randi, the famous magician and skeptic, straight up accused them of faking evidence and exploiting scared people. Investigative journalists like Joe Nickell dug into their cases and found holes everywhere. Sketchy photos, changing stories, clients who later said they felt manipulated. These critics didn't see demon fighters. They saw master manipulators feeding mass hysteria. Even the Catholic Church kept its distance. Despite all the crucifixes and holy water, the Warrens were never officially recognized by the Vatican. Kind of ironic, right? The most famous Catholic exorcists operating completely outside the church. Then came accusations that hit different. In the 2000s, a woman claimed Ed had an inappropriate relationship with her that started when she was a teenager living in their home. The claims were disputed, and Lorraine never really addressed them before she died, but it cast a shadow over their carefully crafted image, made people look at their legacy with fresh, critical eyes. Even their famous occult museum got called out as basically a haunted house attraction. Sure, believers felt genuine dread walking through it, but critics saw props and tall tales designed to draw paying customers. Now it's closed, officially for zoning violations, but some say it collapsed under the weight of its own mythology. So who's telling the truth? Maybe we'll never know for sure. Maybe the Warrens' real talent wasn't seeing spirits, but spinning stories that touched our deepest fears. The terror that we're not alone, that evil knows our names. One thing's certain, Ed and Lorraine Warren forced people to pick sides. Love them, fear them, doubt them. You couldn't ignore them. They stood at the crossroads of belief and horror, and they never blinked. Even after Ed died in 2006 and Lorraine in 2019, their influence didn't fade, it exploded. The Warrens didn't just leave behind dusty case files and creepy artifacts, they left an empire. When The Conjuring dropped that based on a true story card, it changed everything. Hollywood took the Perrons' real trauma and turned it into a blockbuster that made the Warrens look like supernatural superheroes. Audiences couldn't get enough. Suddenly, Ed and Lorraine weren't just names in paranormal books, they were everywhere. The Conjuring Universe has made over $2 billion, spawning sequel after sequel. Annabelle went from a dumpy doll in a glass box to a horror icon. Based on true events, became more than marketing. It became part of the mythology. Online, the Warren obsession is real. YouTube, Reddit, TikTok, thousands of people dissecting their cases, comparing movie scenes to real accounts, building theories about what really happened. Some cite The Conjuring as the film that made them believers. Others dig deeper, looking for what the Warrens left out or what Hollywood added in. But it's not just entertainment, it's become almost spiritual for some. The Warren Occult Museum, even closed, still draws attention. People share stories about cursed visitors who touch things they shouldn't have. The place might be shuttered, but its legend lives on. Their books still circulate among true believers. The Demonologist is basically required reading for paranormal enthusiasts. In it, the Warrens present their lives as an epic battle against unholy forces, urging readers to pray, protect themselves, and never underestimate the darkness. But the critics haven't gone quiet. Journalists keep revisiting their famous cases, pointing out inconsistencies, interviewing people who felt exploited. For every person who leaves the theater wanting to sage their house, another walks out questioning the ethics of turning real fear into entertainment. And maybe that's what makes their legacy so haunting. It never settles. The Warrens tapped into something deeper than ghosts or demons. They tapped into doubt itself. To some, they brought light to the darkest places. To others, they built an empire on half-truths and terror. But to everyone, believer or skeptic, they left something that still whispers from the edges of our culture. A reminder that where there are questions, there will always be ghosts. So after all the demon encounters, the cursed dolls, the possessions that pushed belief to its limits, what's the real truth about Ed and Lorraine Warren? Were they genuine protectors driven by faith and a sincere need to help the tormented? Or were they brilliant performers who knew exactly how to turn a creaky floorboard into a front-page story? The thing is, the Warrens didn't just investigate hauntings. They created a mythology that balanced on the knife's edge between horror and hope. They claimed to fight for righteousness against enemies you couldn't see, couldn't prove, couldn't touch. And that's both the genius and the darkness of what they built. It was never really about the ghosts, it was about how badly we wanted to believe in them. Their story flickers between fact and fiction, just like the spirits they chased. To their followers, they were shields against evil, walking into hell so others didn't have to. To their critics, they were opportunists, turning fear into fortune. And maybe that was the point. Because in those dark corners where logic fails and superstition thrives, we crave symbols, light versus dark, good versus evil, truth versus terror. The Warrens gave us that. They gave fear a face. Whether that face belonged to a savior or a storyteller, well, that's for each of us to decide. But here's what I know for sure. The ghosts might be gone, but the Warrens, they're still here, in whispers, in headlines, in that flicker of doubt when you hear a noise at night. And maybe we want them to stay, because it's not really about whether demons are real. It's about the terrifying possibility that someone, somewhere, truly believed they were. So now I've got to ask, what do you think? Were Ed and Lorraine Warren the real deal, fighting actual evil, or were they master manipulators spinning terror into gold? Drop a comment and let me know. What was their most terrifying case? Which one do you think was completely staged? Have you ever experienced something that made you question what's real? Let's talk about it, because sometimes the scariest part of a ghost story is realizing how close it hits to home. And if you're into dark tales like this, true stories soaked in mystery and controversy, hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, we're just getting started with the world's most forbidden legends. Next time, we're diving into the disturbing case of Carl Tanzler, the man who loved a woman so obsessively that even death couldn't keep them apart. Stay curious, stay cautious, and remember, be careful what you believe.